Welcome everyone to today's important discussion on Sentenced, a documentary that was produced by Stephen and Ayesha Curry and the Children's Literacy Project, where we have the opportunity to take an up close look at the devastating impacts of illiteracy on children and their families across this nation. And we have the opportunity to have some conversation today with a distinguished panel of leaders that are going to talk more about this film and their perspectives on how we all can contribute to this challenge that we're faced with. And so today I encourage you to welcome with me Reverend Canon Leonard L. Hamlin Sr. Reverend Hamlin was appointed the Canon Missioner of the Washington National Cathedral in March 2018 and serves as the Minister of Equity and Inclusion after serving the Macedonia Baptist Church as pastor for 22 years. We also have with us today Chris Helfrich, who is the president and CEO of the Stephen and Ayesha Curry's Eat, Learn, Play Foundation, which he helped launch in July 2019. Chris is a social entrepreneur and a nonprofit leader committed to finding innovative solutions to community-based issues and problems. We also have with us Jeff Martin, who is the founder and president of the Children's Literacy Project and co-producer of the film Sentenced. He's an acclaimed producer of award-winning impactful documentaries such as Undivided, A River Between Us, and Lord Save Us from Your Followers. We also have here today Dr. David Moore, who is the superintendent of schools for the school district of Indian River County. Upon his arrival in Indian River, he initiated the work to completely re-envision education in the district and solidified a framework for systems change within that district. And last but certainly not least, we have our moderator for today, Joy Thomas Moore, who's a Peabody Award winner and president and CEO of JWS Media Consulting. Prior to starting her consulting business for full-time, Joy worked for 15 years with the Annie Casey Foundation, a private philanthropy organization dedicated to helping build better futures for disadvantaged children and families in the United States. And so today we'll dive into how Campaign for Grade Level Reading communities and partners, how each of you can actively support these efforts and explore the hopeful steps we can all take to make a difference in the lives of young people. We want to begin our conversation today by showing just the trailer to Sentence, and then Joy will pick up and lead our conversation from there.
I don't know it's skill. I really don't know what it says.
My wife texts me, what's I? That is a I right, with the little dash thing. I don't know how to say that.
Kindergarten first, second, it begins there. And slowly we begin to lose you.
The stakes are high. The stakes is life and death.
You can't teach yourself how to read if you don't know how to read.
Spent a total of 9 years in prison.
He has a knife, and then when Daddy goes to school.
I can't afford a dentist.
I was devastated. Don't know how to spell it, but yeah.
I only graduated from the 6th grade. He's going through the same issues like me. I hope and I pray to God he's better than me.
She's falling behind in her reading. She had to repeat the first grade for the second time.
Because my teacher gave me a hard work that I don't know.
How can I make a difference in my community? How can I keep them out of prison? How can I break this generational poverty?
It's easier to build strong children than repair broken men.
We have a chance to actually change a broken system.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Joy Thomas Moore, and what you've just seen is one of the reasons I fell in love with media in the first place. The beauty is its power. It has the power to engage, to inform, to influence, and even change minds and hearts. It can transform our lives and sometimes wonderfully upend our way of doing things. Take, for example, there were documentaries about the hospice movement in England that introduced and cemented the idea here in the States. One such documentary in 2005 is The Pioneers of Hospice, Changing the Face of Dying. Another example is when I was at the Casey Foundation, we supported a documentary about a family in Chicago that had to rebuild their lives following the tragedy. The backbone of that family was a grandmother. As a result of that film, there was national legislation passed, bearing an acronym from that documentary, Legacy, Living Equitably, Grandparents, Children, and Youth. When it comes to reading, there are any number of documentaries that have highlighted the science of reading, like No Small Matter, which we shared last year during GLR Week. There was another documentary out at about the same time that focused on the moral imperative of reading for all kids, the right to read. And as you've just seen, this year we have had the privilege to partner with the Children's Literacy Project and Stephen and Ayesha Curry to present this documentary, Sentence. We will start actually with one of the people who is most responsible for this documentary, not only because he was the producer, but because he was the father of the director of this film. Jeff?
Hi, Joy. Hi, everybody.
Let's start with, why did you make this film in the first place? And what did you discover along the way?
Yeah. Well, thanks. Why I made this film is because I'm a filmmaker, and I've been involved in bringing resources to public schools for a long time. And I did a film called Undivided, which Hillary mentioned earlier, and it was about showing faith communities that they had an appropriate role in public schools if they understood how the schools worked and cooperated with the mission. And in that process, I was evangelizing that idea. I guess I shouldn't say that when we're talking about church. I was promoting that idea with some friends in Memphis, Tennessee, and they were adopting the cause of early childhood literacy, kind of creating a unity effort around with the nonprofits and the faith communities and Shelby County schools, and everybody was coming together around the cause of literacy. And when I saw it, a light bulb went off, and I said, this is not getting the attention it deserves. This is a justice issue. This involves the entire community. And because I'm a filmmaker, I've very rarely stepped too far away from projects that don't result in me exploring the idea of whether there was a feature or documentary in that program. And so I got exposed to the power of literacy and its impact on poverty and on helping schools, the need for the schools to get the assistance they need. And so I just sort of made it our business to draw attention to the cause of literacy. The interesting thing, I got asked that question one time at a film festival, why'd you make this film? And I said, well, I don't know a literacy organization that is actually doing the work on the ground with the children themselves that would spend what's turned out to be 5 years because of COVID, but 3 years and $1 million to make a movie when they've got families to serve. I don't think with that they'd spend their money that way, but because that's the ecosystem that I live in, I could do it. And essentially, this is a message that's going to come through again and again from me on this webinar. This film was made for you. Film was made for you, Joy. I hadn't met you, but you were one of the very first people to see it, even before Stephen was involved. And you told me we had something. and we could use this film. And so it's essentially designed. I mean, our true north is the success of the organizations that are serving the children. And so whether it's school districts or nonprofits or literacy organizations or really anybody that's using the film to advance the cause in their community, we made it for them. As I've said to people, it's a little not classy, but we don't owe anybody any money on this film. So it's available and we're using it. So yes, it's on Peacock now. It went on Peacock yesterday. But we have rights to make it possible for organizations to use this film. The other question that you asked, and by the way, you can go into the Children's Literacy Project website, and it's a very obvious path to connect with us and connect your organization into our database so that we can share the film with you for your purposes. And we hope you fundraise with it. We hope you can recruit volunteers with it. We hope you invite your mayors and your school board leaders and anybody that's going to advocate for the cause with you and your fine work. Those are the people that need to see this movie. And as long as you are hosting an event yourself, you're free to use it any way you like. And we have people that will help you with that. The other question that you asked, Joy, that I think is like the best question to ask a documentarian, because you think you know what you're doing. You've been involved in this a long time, Joy, so you understand this reality and can back me up. You think you know what you're making until you start making it. And I can tell you that of all the films that Hillary mentioned, only one of them came out close to what I was thinking. And it was literally a historical piece about how two organizations came together and made something work on behalf of the kids. So that wasn't, we didn't drift too far afield on that one. But this film started out like a lot of them. We're going to talk to smart people, and we're going to back that up with footage that proves the story. And one of the directors, we had two directors, my son Connor and a very brave photojournalist named Mark Allen Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
Mark said to my son Connor, "Yeah, I'm going to help you with this film. I know a man and lives in South Central Los Angeles, and he can't fix his cars. He can't read, but he fixes cars." And so we went and met Fuji. You met Fuji even in that trailer if you haven't seen the movie. And Mark went out and hung out with Fuji for a couple of weeks before any cameras came out, just to get to know his family and to build trust and to understand if there was really a story there. And Connor went out. When they came back with Fuji's story, they said, "We're not doing experts." We had already interviewed a few experts. "We're not doing experts. We're going to do a deep dive into these families." And so we didn't know anybody in New York City. We didn't know anybody in the hills of North Carolina. And Mark went out because he's a photojournalist, found the stories, came to know the families, and brought Connor out when it was time to film. And then he did the same thing on the streets of New York City. He knew a cop, and they walked around the South Bronx together and started asking, "Do you know any families with children that struggle with reading?" And ultimately, we found two more families. And what happened to us, Joy, and the reason I went through all that long litany there is that we knew all of a sudden the film was no longer about illiteracy. It was about generational poverty. And the burden, if you add illiteracy to poverty, especially generational poverty, you have a toxic, I mean, it named the movie for us, Sentenced. The children are sentenced before they're old enough to know they've done anything wrong. They've never done anything. They've just been children in their families. We didn't know, this is another thing that came to us along the way. What we learned, you can't make a film about illiterate children because they're not illiterate. No one's taught them to read yet. And they're not illiterate for a long time. They're not illiterate until the circumstances of life hit them in the face and they can't handle the reading piece of whatever life is dealing them.
Exactly.
And so it's not a film about children. It's a film about adults, but the thing that we can fix easily and quickly because of the institutions surrounding children is we can help the children. And so this became the intersection of generational poverty and illiteracy. And I think when the Currys, I can answer any questions, or you can ask me later about when the Currys got involved in the film and why, and Chris is here from their foundation. That was why they got involved. They didn't get involved in the film because they were experts, smart people. They got involved in the film because they saw the broken hearts and the broken lives that they are trying to take care of in their community, and that we need to take care of in all of our communities. So we became activists in this space as a result. That's what we learned, Joy. So thank you for that question.
Well, yeah, and I think that, one of the things that drew me in, and I'm sure that drew the Currys in, was the intimacy of the film. And a lot of times filmmakers don't take the time to really, really know, the people that they are, whose lives that they're sharing. And so it showed. I think that was one of the first things that impressed me. And why, as filmmakers, you really brought that home.
Credit to Mark Allen Johnson for his courage to go places where he doesn't. I mean, imagine doing a film saying, I'm going to find something. I don't know anybody there, but I'll find you somebody. And then he found these generous people who would share their story. It was really a great credit to Mark. And then Connor and Mark are great filmmakers, and they knew how to turn it into something we could use together. And credit to all of them for sure.
Well, it draws you in, and I'm sure Reverend Hamlin, you saw this film and it drew you in. And so you don't often think, literacy and the faith community, it's not necessarily something that is, like top of mind. But why do you think the faith community can play a role in this whole literacy, issue? And can faith really, the faith community has a long history, I know, of talking about literacy. Way back, it was a church that taught reading. And so is this a way of really sort of reclaiming some of its historical impact?
Well, Joy, let me say I'm grateful to be with you and Jeff and the others who are having this conversation today. And even as you ask the question, it almost, to me, shows how much we really need to work together on this and bring all voices to the table. That even to raise why would the faith community be involved is something that we should all be thinking about. That when we talk about addressing needs that are just glaring, I'm thankful for this film, and as you have stated earlier, the real sort of personal connection that you can make with this film, and how touching it is to so many parts of us as we look and see each other, and really how much we need each other, rather than as we know exist so much of it in our current culture and society, rather than othering each other, to say that's someone else or someone else's children or another community, when really we're all affected by this issue. And in the faith community, we get a chance, certainly in pastoring all the years that I was pastoring, many in the faith community, that's where you get to see up close and personal the issues of a child being left behind or not having the ability or the resources, and even the adults who are struggling to access economic opportunities and availabilities, to manage healthcare, to being able to provide really a good home for family. This allows us to not only see the current situation, but when we talk about faith and caring for one another, we do have to ask the question about what will our future look like? There's a wonderful passage, of course, in Christian texts that we hold, as well as in other faiths, where you do ask the question, or not so much in the question, but the statement, where there is no vision, the people perish. What does it look like? And what will it look like if we don't do anything right now? What will our future look like? What are we subjecting our children and the generations to? Even as some look at it, right outside their door, to the communities, to the nation, to the world, what will it look like? We've got to have a vision in this area so that we are moving forward, we are having a better life. And as we would put it, and certainly in the faith community, and I speak, of course, out of the roots of my own faith, that people know what life and life abundant really is all about, because we have cared for each other, we have helped one another, and certainly we've given each other the resources to succeed.
Absolutely, it becomes a moral imperative.
Very much so. Very much so. I just hope that those, let me say, I know they will, after seeing the film, they will see it clearly, and see it clearer. We have this tendency at times to turn away from issues, but I hope that we will see this, and even through our faith, we'll turn to, knowing that, as I've grown up hearing and share so often, that the task ahead of us is not as great as the power behind us.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Reverend Hamlin, while I have you on that topic, I'm also, I don't have a collar, but I'm a man of faith myself. And I know that the Bible talks constantly about concerning ourselves with the needs of the marginalized and the poor. We don't get a pass on that. And in Matthew 25:35, it's a call to arms in terms of concerning ourselves with the needs of the poor and the marginalized and the stranger. And as you've done it unto the least of these, you've done it unto me. And he's talking about children. He's talking about, so it's foundational to where the motivation in my heart comes. And that's why I love being with you on this project, because I know you'll protect me from my clumsy words and the odd way of saying things that I probably have.
Well, the one thing we know is that reading is not a siloed issue.
Right.
That's right.
And that's why it transcends all of us. And even when you think about Steph and Ayesha Curry, Chris, we know that this is one of the nation's top basketball players. Why reading? And why has the foundation sort of devoted itself in a big, big way? And is starting with Oakland.
Yeah, thank you for that question, Joy. And it's great to be here. It's great for our Eat, Learn, Play Foundation to be involved with Sentenced. We couldn't be any more excited or grateful about the film. The Currys, right? Ayesha and Stephen founded Eat, Learn, Play in 2019 as a way of making sure that this next generation, right, has the resources and support and love, right, that they need to reach their full potential. From day one, the Currys were adamant that our primary focus be Oakland, California. Oakland is the Currys' adopted hometown. It's where they became a family, where Stephen won 3 championships. And importantly, it's a community with so much talent, right? But also its share of major challenges as well. And so, the Currys established Eat, Learn, Play as a way of trying to support this next generation across these 3 interrelated issues that we work on, right? We work on food security. Almost 40% of Oakland students live in food insecure households. We do a lot of work in our play pillar, remodeling schoolyards and revitalizing school sports, because for kids in Oakland, there's a lack of safe places to play and opportunities to experience the joys and the benefits of participating in youth sports. One of the biggest things we are doing, though, is around literacy, which is the main thrust of our Learn pillar at Eat, Learn, Play. It took us a couple of years, Joy, to really arrive at literacy as our dominant issue. It took a lot of listening, and it took a lot of research, but once we really could wrap our arms around just how important it is for kids to be, become confident, strong readers at the right ages, it was a no-brainer, especially because the Currys are young parents. They've got young kids who are all on their journeys as readers, and Stephen too is the son of a teacher and a school administrator. So we've been on this journey with trying to make sure that this generation of students in Oakland has the resources to read for the last several years. We had a major moment a couple of weeks ago when we made what for us and for Oakland was a pretty historic commitment. We have committed $25 million over the next 5 years to make sure that nearly 10,000 students, Oakland public school students who are furthest behind in reading, have access to the year-long one-on-one professional tutoring support that they need to catch up. For us, this came after again a lot of research and a lot of understanding of what will move the needle and have the greatest impact for these kids. And tutoring came back to us as an intervention that is expensive but that works. And so at Eat, Learn, Play, the Currys have always been adamant that Oakland kids deserve the best. So we're stretching ourselves as a foundation, and we are laser focused on getting it right and making sure that these kids do have access to the tutoring support that they need. This last semester we led tutoring pilots at 18 different elementary schools throughout the district. And the results, right, from those pilots was extraordinary, right? Kids, jumping up 2 grade levels or more in a matter of months because of the professional support that they were getting. That only sort of strengthened our resolve. We imagine a world in which every Oakland student can become great readers at the right times, with the attitude of, listen, if we can get it right in our hometown of Oakland, then, ours is a playbook that can go into other communities. And the Currys, as they've started here with Sentence, can become powerful advocates for this issue on a national level, recognizing that this literacy crisis that we're trying to help solve in Oakland, it's a nationwide crisis. So we're trying to do our part. We're taking a big swing here, but again, having partners, like this film Sentenced and like the campaign for grade level reading, gives us confidence that we're on the right path and we can do some big things together.
Now, how do you amass the tutors that you need for that kind of a big bet?
Yeah, for us, it was identifying the professional tutoring organizations, right, to do this work. So, Stephen and Ayesha, Eat, Learn, Play, we've got our strengths and we've got our assets. We are not professional tutors ourselves, and there's definitely not thousands of us. So, it's all about the power of partnerships. It's how are we aligning with the best of the best tutoring organizations and companies to bring resources, and the vast majority of them are virtual tutoring, which is even more effective than I would have guessed, which allows us to scale in the community way quicker than if we were going to do a volunteer tutoring drive or just try to hire local tutors, which is part of the strategy. But for the kids furthest behind, it's that consistent professional support that we've determined they need the most.
Yeah, no, I absolutely. I know that, well, first of all, you can plug his book. He just has a new kids book, right? That I understand is amazing. But, the whole idea of how do you, get the army of people that you need. And I know oftentimes it's having that one consistent adult, to be with a child, to really help help them realize that they can read. so I'm sure that, as you say, the strategy, going to, volunteers, which you'll need, as well as the professional tutors will go a long way in advancing your mission.
Yeah, it's really well said. I mean, quickly, Ayesha Curry, right? From day one, she's talked about wanting Eat, Learn, Play to be part of the village for this generation of Oakland kids. And that's what we're trying to do. And as we bring these tutors on, that's part of the village that they walk into as well.
Joy, if I can weigh in on Eat, Learn, Play, because I've had the privilege of getting to know them intimately through this process. I just can't say enough about what one family can do. If you're that the Currys would step up in such a magnificent way, not a symbolic way, but like a literally owning the problem. And there are people with resources like that could literally own the communities they live in, support the schools at that level. They're working so closely with the schools that it's integrated. So there's nobody's in the way of each other. Everybody's rowing in the same direction with this story. It's such a great model. They didn't enter this as literacy people. They entered this as advocates for their community. And we know that when Dr. Moore comes up, he's going to be able to tell the same story, that when the advocates of the community step up and empower the professionals, my job is to find stories, and these are stories. This is an extraordinary story of an example that so many could follow. I'm so thankful to be intimate with Eat, Learn, Play in this way, so I can scream this from the mountaintops for sure.
Yeah, it's the partnership. It's, that it cannot be done without that kind of partnership. And Dr. Moore, you have, tell us your story, that what you've been able to do in terms of the school system working with the community.
Yeah, thank you. And just as an update, we're having our premiere tonight with the community of the viewing of Sentence for the next 2 nights. We're going to have the opportunity to bring in the entire community to really reestablish our priority around literacy in the school district of Indian River County. 5 years I've been here and just began the work with the acknowledgement the school system is in fact broken, and literacy is not solely taught within the confines of a classroom. It is taught across the entire community. And the not-for-profits that exist to support students should not be on the outside of a school system, but we should be integrated in the work that we collectively do together. In recruiting me, there was a group here locally in Indian River County called the Learning Alliance, who came to Miami, where I was the assistant superintendent for transformation. I was responsible for the 3rd largest district in the nation's 102 lowest performing schools. And we had done some really, really good work. There were 16 schools that were F, 45 schools that were a D. We were able to get rid of all of the Ds, all of the Fs over the course of 2 years, with the exception of 1 D. And this organization came to Miami to learn about this work. And what I found interesting, as we gave them the typical tour you gave so many people that come in, was that it was the outside organization who had the unwavering belief that we can, in fact, get this done in Indian River County. And the district folks who came had all of the excuses as to why it can't be done. And immediately, to me, I thought that was extremely interesting. So looking at the data, looking at the information at the community, this school system was 38 of 67. Had the opportunity to visit, and there's no way that this community should be 38 of 67 school districts in the state of Florida. The opportunity came to interview for superintendent, and that's exactly what I did, and came in just prior to the pandemic, 44 days before the pandemic hit, came in and used that time to say, we are drastically underperforming. Our students deserve better. And we need to question absolutely everything that we're doing. And we need to reinvent what public education looks like. And it isn't just continuing to do more of the same. It is breaking down at a fundamental level what structures of teaching look like, and ensuring that we're empowering our teachers with solid instructional environments based on the science of reading, to ensure that every single teacher in our school system is in fact a master teacher of literacy. One of the things that I've done probably most unique is to pull in our community partners. That organization, the Learning Alliance that I was speaking with, we have completely partnered with them. We have created a school in partnership, probably one of the first of its kind, where it is a not-for-profit organization partnering with a public school to create what we call our Moonshot School. And what we did is put a stake in the ground at Vero Beach Elementary School, and we said, we're just not going to talk about 90% of our students reading at grade level in third grade. We're going to show to the world that it can be done. And this is a partnership. It's going into its third year. Our third graders going into this third year are actually in third grade. But last year's third graders had an improvement from 35% to 50% students, a 15% improvement just in 1 year. That is absolutely tremendous. And we didn't pick a school that was one of our high achieving schools. We picked a school of poverty in our community because we just wanted to show the world it can be done. The partnership is absolutely amazing. We are standing shoulder to shoulder, doing this work, conducting professional learning, providing outside resources, not on the outside of the school, but within the school, providing meaningful development for our teachers, providing additional resources for our students, a success coach, bringing literacy to life through a coach that comes in and connects drama and theater to the novels that we're reading. We have changed what public education looks like in this community. Now, we use this Moonshot School not only to benefit the students that go there, but we use it as our own lab. And what that means is there's a lot of colleges and universities that have lab schools. Indian River County, we've created our own lab school where we have the benefit of bringing in all of the other educators to see these high yield strategies being done at a model implementation. So our teachers in our Moonshot School have the opportunity to be credentialed, compensated for the extra work, to be a master teacher within specific areas. And then we can bring in folks from the outside to go in and see what quality instruction looks like. And we want to prove not only to our community, but ultimately the state and nation that if it can be done at Vero Beach Elementary School, it can be done anywhere. So we are now the 9th highest performing school district in the state of Florida. We've had back-to-back A's for the first time in the history of our district. We've continued to outpace the district in our students performing at proficiency in third grade. It is absolutely a collective effort, and it's just not a school district's responsibility. It's our community responsibility. And some of the alignment that we have in place. Actually had the opportunity to meet Jeff in a seminar that we had. We call it Policy Performance Practice, where we brought in folks from across the nation to say, hey, look at what we're doing. We don't think that we're perfect, but we are really committed to getting feedback. And Jeff was one of the individuals that were there, created that partnership, connected me to this specific work. I'm going to put in the chat, we're having another performance and practice. So if anybody wanted to come in and see this work in real action, click on the link that I just posted in the chat, come out and see it. We would love to have you, not only to share the work that we're doing, but to learn from you.
Yeah, because you've already started documenting some of that, right, Jeff?
Yes, we did a week of interviews with everybody on his team, going back in October to film there. So you can't imagine the event they have with principals, with how they review data and encourage. They have this collaborative, non-critical, totally supportive, collaborative kind of environment that they create, where they go over the data of every school and they help each other. And I've just never seen anything like it. I will just say this. I had to ask the question after a day there. I found somebody in the corner and said, are they putting on a show for us, or is this what it's really like? And they said, it's really like this. I have never been in a place of peace like this elementary school. And you go in the classroom and the children are gathered in groups of 2. If they're doing social studies, they're reading and then doing they're doing art, they're reading. If they're doing science, they're reading. And when you watch these teachers teach phonics and literacy, you feel like you're in science class, and these little people are just cranking out success in their lives. It's so beautiful. As you know, as I said earlier, I'm a filmmaker. I walk around looking for stories that I was like, I'm sold, I'm helping. So,
Well,
and
and what it's sort of it speaks to is the fact that, when you went into that position, Dr. Moore, you believed it could happen and you made it. And that's in many ways what faith is.
Yeah, and my story is much aligned and embedded within faith. And I tell the story when I was a school counselor. I became a school counselor in an alternative school in Miami where all of the students had been expelled from their traditional high school. And they had every reason to give up on a system that had ultimately failed them. But the adults in that school were not going to let that happen. And they were able to be very creative, create what they called alternative strategies to figure out how they're going to be unique to meet the needs of kids. And I, in that moment for me is like, how do you replicate that just not at a school, but for an entire school system? So that really, that's all I've been chasing, trying to connect adults to each other, to think as fast as they possibly can, to learn as quick as they possibly can, to make decisions as close to kids, to improve the instructional reality within the confines of a positive culture, to transform what teaching and learning looks like. And when you're willing to address public education from that standpoint, that yes, it can't be done. You can't do it alone. There's barriers and obstacles. There's challenges. It's hard, complex work, but all we are doing is solving problems collectively and together in order to have a positive impact on the life of children and ultimately the community in which those children live.
Reverend Hamlin, how can we help those? I mean, when folks will look at the statistics, for example, that the United States now ranks about 125th out of 194 countries in terms of our literacy rate. That's a rather daunting statistic, right? The film is really sobering. People who don't believe, like this panel here, that something can happen. How do you convince them that there is hope in being able to move this needle?
There's probably so many ways that I could probably state or encourage everyone. But I probably will begin this way to say that, all of us should seek to, and I've said this in so many different occasions, but all of us should seek to begin right where our feet are planted. That we want to go so far. We think about the destination and realize that this is a journey that we're taking. This is a process in here. And as I often say it, that, it is possible to bloom where your feet are planted. I'm appreciating hearing my colleagues right now when we talk about the kind of faith and rooted in the kind of recognition of community and care for one another that really is exhibited with the kind of faith that says, not that this can happen, but it will happen. I was listening, just excited to hear Jeff and Dr. Moore and Chris and the way that they were speaking, because underlying all of this was not a question, it was a statement that we are going to make this happen. There is that belief that's there. I would encourage everyone to get involved. Even as we talk about the history, I come from a time, and when we were pastoring, the church was the one that reached out to the local school, volunteered as neighbors there, or encouraged the congregants to go in, as individuals to read to a child, to see, what's close and what's there. I think if we look at the numbers, sometimes what is that old saying, we're trying to eat the elephant, in one big bite. But we got to eat that elephant one bite at a time, knowing that some of us, and there are many hungry people out there, we can get that elephant eaten if we just take one step at a time. But as we're hearing with those that I'm joining in today. And I'm trying, as you said, I'm inspired just even listening to them, because there is that kind of commitment to this that says this will happen.
Absolutely.
I love to chime in on my friends here. I'm lucky enough to have the common denominator of all these friendships. And Reverend Hamlin and I are busy. He's talking about blooming where he's planted. Well, he's planted at the Washington National Cathedral, the other hill in Washington D.C., the one where the moral case for America is made. The house where anybody can come and worship and celebrate or mourn. You're welcome. It's a very welcoming place for people, and he understands this better than anybody. And we are cooking up an opportunity to bloom where he's planted right now. It's not ready to announce, but he's not watching us and going, good job. He's going, all right, we're rolling up our sleeves, aren't we? And we have some plans as well. So to make sure that the young people in Washington, D.C., the people who activate in the best way, if you want, you can get grandma to be a tutor, but what if you got granddaughter to get involved in the cause of literacy? She'll drag mom and grandma and grandpa into the cause with her. And so we're dreaming together too, aren't we, Reverend Hamlin?
That's right. We're going to tie all this together.
You have to have the faith of
And the
Dr.
beauty of
Moore and
partnership.
Chris.
That's right. There's so many strands, but there's something wonderful about being able to pull these pieces together and then marveling over, of course, what can be, as we say, out of the little things, come the great things.
Yeah, I'm with
Right.
you.
And everyone can play a role. Everyone. You can have older siblings helping their younger siblings. You can have grandparents. You can have retired, folks, helping their neighbors down the street. Everyone can play a part. And if you're in business, and that I think is one of the things, Dr. Moore, that you have experienced in Indian River, the partnerships, the strength of your partnerships. And that's what's making a difference.
Mute. You're on mute.
I didn't realize I muted myself. I'm sorry, but you're 100% correct. We have the information. We know exactly where the student is struggling. To have an outside organization who solely exists to be in support and service to a family and a child, not to work and partner with them, makes everyone's job harder to do. So we do development for our not-for-profits. We share data with them. We come in and make sure the services that they are providing are aligned to the deficit, which becomes an extension of the classroom and not something that's separate or something that's not necessarily needed, but 100% focused and aligned to where the student needs it. So creating those partnerships is a big piece to our community success in our schools. We don't want anyone to be frustrated, whether it be a parent, whether it be an organization that exists to service kids, because they don't have the information. Is it extra work? Absolutely. Does it pay dividends in terms of academic performance and a better community? Every day of the week and twice on Sunday.
Not every community, Chris, can have a benefactor, if you will, like the Currys. What can other funders, ordinary people who want to invest, what can they learn from what you are doing in Oakland?
It's a good question. I mean, I'm not sure any of the, we haven't tried to recreate the wheel, right? But I'd say I two things off the top of my head, right, stick out. One is very simple, but oftentimes I think missed, which is, listen, right? Like, listening to the community, the families, the kids, the teachers in our instance, the leaders who have been in this space and working on these issues for a long time. If you can be listening to them and what they communicate the needs are, then whatever resources you're able to put into that community, I think are going to have a greater impact. And then the second thing, it's interesting. we went through, after about 3 years at Eat, Learn, Play, some deep strategic planning, just trying to understand, right? Like, what's the highest and best role for us in the community? And what became clear to us is that for an organization, at our age and our size, we weren't quite as big then as we were now. The biggest ROI on our time spent and our resources invested was not, trying to create something brand new ourselves, but it came down to the question of, like, these kids that we're trying to reach, where are they, right? And what's the system that serves them? And how can we do our part potentially to improve that system that exists? And so there was a light bulb moment for us at Eat, Learn, Play when we realized, public schools are, in our community of Oakland, where 35,000 kids go to Eat, Learn, and Play every day. And the outcomes there, right, are not nearly good enough, including but not limited to literacy rates. So we made a big bet on this public-private partnership to try to do everything we can to improve that system, that distribution channel that's serving kids, in order to have the greatest impact. And so this idea of, meeting our constituents where they are, right, and public-private partnerships, I think is a big one for funders. And you talk about us as a benefactor of Oakland, and while that might be partially true, right, the model of Eat, Learn, Play is that the Currys from day one committed to forever funding our overhead, administrative and fundraising costs, so that every dollar that comes in goes directly back out. So we sort of play this sort of convening or point guard role for the community.
Mhm.
And so if there are funders listening here, there's plenty of room on our Eat, Learn, Play team to try to take, again, a big swing at this and get it done. So like Ayesha says, it takes a village.
Absolutely.
Joy, can I chime in again?
Sure.
I know a man on this island outside Seattle called Camino Island, and he caught the bug of literacy, and he said, "I'm going to get involved in a program." And so he looked up, and there was no program. So he went down to the school and said, "A friend of mine's got involved in literacy, and I want to get involved too." And he it was within the filling out of one background check that he was reading to 3 third graders a week later. And today there's a whole team of people that are flooding this school as reading mentors because a friend walked up to the school, and he's discovering all the things that Dr. Moore and Chris's team and all those people, when you go into the schools, you suddenly realize, oh, there's something I can do here. I had a couple businessmen that aren't a rounding error in the Stephen Curry world of their wealth, and they said, we don't have a project in our town in Vancouver, Washington. And the first they found enough money to pull together one coordinator, and they found one school, and they sent 12 volunteers, and that was 24 months ago. And they have 350 volunteers and 4 coordinators and are applying for an executive director for one of the big foundations out here in the Northwest. It happens fast when you get involved. It's such a felt need that we're on the call with people that know literacy well, and make it their business. So we encourage everybody on an individual level to support local literacy programs. It's your money, your time, your friendship, whatever. We are not, like Chris, we have our overhead generally taken care of, and so we're mostly encouraging people to act locally any way you can as a volunteer. Walk up to the school and ask if you can help, and they'll tell you if you can or not. They usually tell you you can.
And the beauty is it doesn't take that long to start seeing results.
Mm-hmm, right.
Kids can make progress over a summer, so that there is no, summer learning loss.
Right.
Once you see a kid who really blossoms, knowing that they have actually reading something, and, you can see it in their eyes and on their faces, and their whole sort of demeanor about education changes. Because a kid can't read, they cannot enjoy school.
Yeah.
And that will help solve the dropout, problems and everything else that goes along with that.
Joy, if
So
it could, it is, and I think our educators could speak about this even better than I could, but, you touched on something about seeing a child read. I mean, or being able to hold that book in their hand and the imagination just starting to light up, beyond the page. Dr. Moore, I like as you talked about the extension of the classroom. I used to hear that a lot years ago. I don't think I hear that much anymore about when people are speaking about the classroom that way and the community partnerships and extending the classroom out as we're learning. But there is just something wonderful about seeing the imagination about what can be. And that's what faith really begins to ask and encourage all of us to wrestle with about what can be, to see the possibilities. And a child who's reading, you're just filled and excited by looking at the possibilities, not only as they're looking at them, but I think, and the adults or the community that's looking at the child are caught up in those possibilities about what they can be, as well, which is exciting.
Yeah, I think
absolutely.
from a educator's standpoint, it's just absolutely critical that we invest in our educators. And so many of our reading programs are scripted, where they ask the teacher to stand in front of the classroom and follow a script and ask the questions, then turn the page. It is not authentic. It is not real. It is not literature. So saying we are going to focus in on the science of reading, and we're going to do something where we're not going to follow a script, but we're going to create lessons that really engage students, and authentic teaching and authentic experiences really transforms the outcomes. And whether it's here in Indian River County or in Miami, so much of our success has not been on just trying to work a number, but invest in educators to make them the best that they can possibly be, and as smart and as quick in their thinking to adjust lessons to expose kids to real quality instruction. That has been so key to our success. Just not trying to make it easy for a teacher and say, hey, follow this script, but let's make it easy for you because you are in fact a master teacher, and we want to invest in you so you have the opportunity to ultimately transform lives.
Right. It really does. Everything sort of intertwines and interrelates. And, and kids, once kids start performing, the teachers, their whole demeanor changes as well because they get energized because they see what they're doing is making a difference.
Absolutely.
So, Jeff, what is, in terms of sentence, what is your vision? What is it that you hope that it will do? And, in terms of a call to action, what exactly did you, as you, sit and ponder about the
Why do we do
impact
this? Yeah.
that you've
Well,
already started to make? What is
yeah.
it that you want to see?
Well, essentially, there was this show on HBO called Veep, where Julia Louis-Dreyfus was this ambitious politician who didn't really have much going on upstairs, but she was angling for success. And one time she complained, she goes, I mean, I'm doing everything. I'm doing literacy, I'm doing anything. And I was like, oh my God, literacy is a laugh line. It's a laugh line in an HBO show. It's stereotyped. And I went, that's bull. This is a crisis. This is an American tragedy. And so a lot of the time when I think about sentence, and I love the other films that you mentioned, Joy, too. I watched The Right to Read and was like, first of all, I'm glad I didn't make that film because they already made it, and it's about Oakland, and it's a great movie. And if I had done interviews, I'd have interviewed Emily Hanford too, So we chose not to do interviews. And my hope is that and we had an event at the Library of Congress last week that several of us were at. And my hope is to awaken America, re-energize America to the cause of early childhood literacy. And I'm going to profile success stories, and I'm going to profile the pain that is in the lives of our people who are in poverty, and particularly our children of generational poverty. And I somehow or another wedged myself into the middle of the cause of literacy in America, and I plan to stay there until every Dr. Moore across the country, every David Banks in New York City, that becomes the standard for how we manage our schools. And I will elevate every story I can find with the great work. I haven't gone to Chris and made a story about the great work they're doing, but let's inspire that class of people that can make the kind of difference Eat, Learn, Play can that can do, like Eat, Learn, Play is doing. Let's inspire superintendents across the country and school boards to go, this is not good enough. And I tell you, it's not hard to find some place where it's not good enough. And that has to be the aberration, not the normal. And I want to be part of it. I want to be part of it. And that was our hope for Sentence, and that's the hope for the Children's Literacy Project. People ask us, like, how many kids are you serving right now? I'm serving every one of these organizations that are on this call right now to increase their success, to bring more volunteers, more donors into their world. We've got Dr. Moore's premiering the film two nights in Indian River. I don't know anybody that's done 2 nights. He's doing 2 nights to bring resource, talent, and community approval to the cause, his great work. And the great work that they're doing there, that's going to become a model. And I'm going to carry that story around when it's done, assuming it gets done and gets done well. That's going to travel. Everything that we're creating now, we're going to do again. And so we are passionate to change the conversation. We're passionate to invite the communities of faith and other nonprofits into the cause of literacy. And we're sort of on our imaginations going wild because of the acceptance of Sentence, which was a question mark. I even noticed a question
I had no doubt. No.
You had no doubt. There's a question about whether we made poverty porn in the Q&A, like the 3rd or 4th question down. And I was like, am I supposed to answer that? I'm watching, and like, well, we walked a fine line, making sure that we made a film that could reach out broadly. And I was told yesterday that Peacock rarely, if ever, takes independent documentary films. And in fact, they took our film probably because of the good name of Stephen Curry. And we're getting great feedback publicly from the film already in the last couple of days. So my hope is America has a different attitude, and that Reverend Hamlin and I and Chris and Dr. Moore are just one of the many that are making a giant difference in this country and helping make it, along with our great friends and partners at the Campaign for Grade Level Reading, that we are part of the solution. And we can't do it all. I'm not an educator. I'm not a literacy guy. I'm an advocate and a noisemaker, as you can tell by my involvement in this thing.
Well, isn't that the lesson? Everyone can be part of this movement.
That's right.
You don't have to be an educator.
I think what the movie does for us, it forces a conversation, because it doesn't end with well, here's what we're doing, this is the next steps, and here's the success of these individuals that we highlight in the movie. It forces a conversation, and I plan over the next 2 nights to leverage that conversation really about the stories that we hear, and what do we have to do in our own specific community to kind of come together to ensure that no one who lives in Indian River County has that experience. So it's tough. It's hard. It leaves an impact, but it absolutely requires a conversation, and facilitating that conversation the right way will lead to the coming together of a community in the alignment and definition of what action needs to take place. So I'm excited to premiere it for the next 2 nights.
Wonderful. And everyone know that not every filmmaker gives this kind of access to the work that they do. In fact, very few do, at least, without some kind of, huge, huge contract or licensing fees and that kind of thing. So, Jeff, the literacy, project is to be commended for the access that you are giving folks to use media as a tool. And that's the beauty of media. I know we have there are quite a few questions in the Q&A. Hillary, I know that you've been sort of curating them as we've gone along. Do you want to come in and give our panelists some of these?
Sure, I'm happy to. So we have had an overwhelming amount of questions in the Q&A box, and so our audience knows we will not get to all of them. But we're going to start with this one from Christian Shea that says, I love the call to action that this film creates, especially calling upon the faith and business communities to volunteer. And so I'm going to ask for just a very straightforward answer because we've gotten a lot of these types of questions. Is there a path for volunteers to get trained so that they can effectively help kids learn to read? Or maybe what is the best path for this?
My experience, just quickly, is that illiteracy organizations generally have, background checks and protocols, and so people who are participating in existing volunteer programs are almost always. I don't know of any circumstances where they're not well trained. The schools have rules, you learn to follow them. If the teacher is leading a literacy program, she's guiding you. So there's always, the training comes naturally. You don't walk in and just, I'm going to the library, anybody needs me, I'll be there. We are depending on literacy organizations to provide that kind of training. Dr. Moore might have a different angle on that.
No, am I on? Yeah, no, for us, it's very specific. It's ongoing. It's continuous. It is providing access, whether it be to the information, the grades. We have some of our community organizations who really are doing mentoring. We want that mentoring to be meaningful. We just don't want it to be around the outside. So we want it to be very, very direct conversations around the truth that is in our schools, whether it's a report card conference, whether it's connecting the mentor with the educator. In terms of training, it is absolutely going in and over the course of time training. We just did one at the end of last school year, as these are the interventions and this is the best way to use them. These are all of the virtual programs that we have that are available to our children. You don't have to recreate some instructional activities. You can go onto their portal, you can open it up, and those lessons will be 100% aligned to their academic needs. So it is just an ongoing conversation on how you're going to train them to make sure their jobs become as easy as possible.
Now, I know that probably no matter how you get started, one of the things that I know that you can speak to, Dr. Moore, as well, is being consistent. Once a child starts to rely on you and to have expectations of your being there to help with the reading, that's probably really important.
Absolutely.
Yep.
You would have I'm sorry.
That's our experience too, with the program we started in Vancouver. The consistency is the giant win for the child. And for both, actually for the mentor too. They get as much out of it. Building those friendships.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah, when you see the progress. Right. Hillary, you have some others?
Of course. So this question got asked in a couple of different formats from various people, but what are some of the ways that these community organizations can best engage? How can they best engage nonprofit organizations, best engage with schools? How can libraries best engage in this literacy work? How can communities at large step in and make an effort to really go after this work around literacy?
Oh, well, again, I'm noisy, and if I talk, they'll give these guys time to think. The What libraries are interesting because anybody who goes to a library doesn't have a problem. They use the library. They go there to get books. They go there, it's a world. And what we experienced at the Library of Congress was that Dr. Carla Hayden said, we need to engage libraries in the cause of literacy. Well, the cause of literacy exists in underserved communities, in underserved schools where kids are challenged. And I wouldn't imagine that the library is generally on their route. And so I would think this is something that libraries need to be proactive about. And like I said, that happened in Vancouver. We helped 12 kids, and 2 years later, with essentially very little money to work with. I know how much these programs cost, and it costs to run programs. And in a very low cost way, 350 kids are being served of just a year and a half after they started with 12. If the library became known for serving 12 kids who need reading support, and they use the people that have it in the library in their lives as their community, and they said, now who here wants to help these kids? You'd have 350 kids very soon too. You may be something that would be leaving the library walls and going into the schools and partnering with the Dr. Moores and the leaders of their schools. So I would very much encourage libraries to see themselves a little bit differently connected to the cause of making literacy a priority in our communities. I almost said making literacy great again. That would be terrible.
No.
That would be terrible. I didn't mean that. I was like, oh, stop. Yeah.
Well, the Library Association is very much a partner, with the Campaign for Grade Level Reading.
Yeah, absolutely.
If I could, as the question was posed, by an individual, I would drill it down, of course, to Jeff, you were referring to this earlier, the difference one person can make. That even as someone is asking that question, or one, behind it is wondering, how can I get involved? To reach out, to make a connection. Don't be afraid to call and see who's there. I would encourage, I haven't been able to follow the chat too. I need help just trying to stay focused on one thing at a time. But, there are probably some names that you're even seeing in the chat who are in your community, who are in your area, saying, wow, there's a connection there. I hope that some connections are even being made through this moment to say, how can we get together and not be intimidated or overwhelmed to make a call. Everything is changed by one individual who is willing to say, let me pick up the phone, or let me reach out, or let me introduce myself, and to find that commonality and that connection that exists. So I just want to encourage that we keep it at or encourage not just the organizational levels that sometimes we can speak about in the world in which we live, but within there are individuals who are so committed and convicted to this. I sit here now, we have to figure out how to, as Jeff was mentioning earlier, pull these threads together. Chris, we have to figure out East Coast, West Coast, and bring this together to really look from one side to the other so that we can smash the middle, as they say, of this cause.
There's a at the end of our film, there's a bunch of people talking about their experience as mentors. And there's a man from Texas, from the Fort Worth area, who we have a whole film on him, but we use a little clip of it from that film to put at the end of the film. He goes, at first I didn't want to do it, but it changed my life. They're helping you. You think you're helping them, but they're helping you. At first I didn't want to do it, but it changed my life. And then with tears in his eyes, and Connor's so clever, he never turns off the camera when people are crying. And he's crying, and he goes, it changed my life. And the longer video, he's become a bored older man that doesn't, that can't do the things he used to do. And somebody teased him into becoming a mentor. And he's crying about what the little boy did for him. So this is a two-way street.
Absolutely.
And I would count anybody in the library world who's if you're adamant about books and reading and you hang out in a library, I would say become a reading mentor. It will change your life.
And for me, it's from a school system's perspective, understanding the common denominator is the student. And not-for-profits may have a mission that is unique to how they're going to be in service to students, but we have to be willing to problem solve to figure out how where are the points of intersection and how do we maximize that relationship, and doing that from a systems perspective and not putting that burden on a principal, and providing or creating a structure in which the information is available. And from a district's perspective, you're looking at all of the schools, understanding what their unique needs are. And as you work with outside organizations, you're almost a matchmaker, where you want to have a balance of services and support across the system. And you want to connect those relationships. So it really is, for me, investing in those organizations, understanding the work that you are doing, and providing points of connectivity, and getting some of those barriers and obstacles out of the way. Because at the end of the day, not these organizations are going out and finding mentors who want to go in, or finding volunteers. But if that experience isn't meaningful, they're just going to stop. They're just going to go away, or they're going to find a different way to invest. You look at parental involvement in secondary schools. Why is it so bad? It's so bad because it's not authentic. The experience is go file some papers. They want to invest in their children. They want to invest in the community at that school. We have to give them better opportunities in terms of what we're asking them to do. And from a school system's perspective, if that already exists, and I can connect those pathways, or have that intersection, the volunteers are going to be, coming to me hand over fist, and I just got to make the right relationships and the right connectivity. And then also the other side is accountability. I want to celebrate, I want to honor, I want to make sure my entire community knows the not-for-profits that are real, that are honest, that are doing this work for all the right reasons. And I want them to know the ones that I wouldn't put my own kid in it, and I'm the superintendent of schools. And it's not harsh. It's just being honest and real, that I want to replicate this service. And if you want to have an experience, go over here and invest with this organization. Let's drastically expand the work that they're doing. Let's not invest in a good idea that's not about really connecting and engaging with kids.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So
Amen.
well said. Hillary?
So this next question kind of has some follow-up feels to that, but before I ask it, for our audience, if you would just take a moment, answer our poll questions, we would greatly appreciate that. We do have a little bit more, about 10 more minutes to our Q&A, and we'll answer a few more questions. But Dr. Moore and others, what about the families? The families play a huge role in this. They're depicted in this film. How do you engage them? How do you consider those families as part of the solution, and particularly those ones that struggle to read themselves?
So for a school system's perspective is to think about this work completely different, and meet parents where they are, and building relationships with them. We've been very strategic. Coming off the pandemic, we actually had to recreate the expectation for principals that schools are, open to all. And we want parents to come in, and we want to make sure that it is a true, honest, authentic relationship. So connecting with them, I think one of the things that we do unique to address that is we will provide parents the opportunity to connect and give information to the mentor, so they understand academically where the child is, so they can ultimately just not mentor the kid, but become an advocate for the kid. Because our parents, as you all know, some cases single parent, some cases 2 or 3 jobs, they absolutely love and want what is in the best interest of their children. And we need to honor that love and desire that they have as a parent, and we can serve as an advocate, and we can connect with them at different times. So for me, it's just not looking at a parent as I can only give information to a parent. I want to honor the parent and I want to make their life as easy as possible. And that's multiple pathways to connect the school, the parent, the child, and the organization or church that they're a part of, and pulling them all together so they see it. Hey, this community has my back. The church and the school works together. The school and the not-for-profit after-school program, they are connected. They see us as one. And the school system just kind of is the blanket that overlaps everything. And we educate our children, but we don't do it in isolation.
Yeah. Can I weigh into one of the things that happened to me when I was in Vero Beach with Dr. Moore and his team? I went, this place has a building, it has a kitchen, it has custodial staff, it's got teachers, it's got coaches, it's got infrastructure. This is a reformable place, and it's being reformed. And it shocked me how they could fix something that was that 18% reading proficiency or something and move it all the way to 69 or 70% in the years they've been working on it, because they fixed it. But if you go down to prenatal before kindergarten, there's nothing to reform. There's no building, there's no bus driver, there's no food, you have to find it in all these little different places. And one of the things that I think that has to happen for those families, and this might be a next film project, and I have to tell you, they're exhausting and they're expensive, and you've got to find people that'll, I mean, my poor son Connor is still in post-traumatic stress over the years he's put into making Sentenced. And he's getting a nice warm bath working with Dr. Moore. That might be the next film project. Might be, what is America going to do about the children of generational poverty? Because you see the families that are supporting the children in the movie. That's not their fault. They can't. They're victims too. It's just that they got old. And then you see them as perps or people that are making a mistake, but they didn't have a chance either. So we need to love into that space. Yeah. And I'm seriously thinking about that I was writing notes before this call, and that was one of my things that, do I dare tell anybody that I'm thinking that, because we're all so tired from Sentenced. But I think prenatal to K is the next American crisis that we need to address. Yeah. Dr. Moore would have way less to do if there was more people.
If that were the case, yeah. And one of the things too that I think that sort of sometimes scares parents, particularly those who have not had great experiences in schools themselves, is that they don't feel like they can offer anything. And when our partners in grade level reading have always said, it doesn't matter. You can teach just by holding a child, by having them in your lap, just by you can read pictures, you can sing to them. All these things contribute to wanting to learn how to read. And so again, working all together in terms of sort of a holistic approach to reading is what I think we can all do. And
Joy, if I could as well press that, because it was such a great question, and Dr. Moore and Jeff, you sent us down that road. We're talking about being proactive here, not reactive, and that begins by building the relationship. It's very hard to address an issue without relationship. And really, if you find yourself doing that, it's usually because there's a crisis. That's when someone will let you in. We're talking now, not just about the crisis that we're facing, but we're trying to be very proactive here. And I do believe, just as it has been said, and I'm kind of jumping on the bandwagon for what has already been out there by everyone, that we've got to build these relationships, which opens doors to the issues. And it opens doors not just to what is visible, but what, of course, is behind the door, the issues that are there. That's what we're really trying to get to here, so that we can get below the ground. We can begin to plant, as we say, good seed for the future. But it all starts with trying to value one another, and to value those who we are fortunate enough to cross paths with, to engage with, and to encounter, and treat those moments as really sacred moments. Really treat them as sacred moments. When we have that opportunity to be with a child, to be with the families, to see them as integral parts of this human, of course, dynamic that we all experience in community.
Absolutely. You know, and I think that, you know, I hate this discussion to end because it's been so full, so fulfilling, so welcoming, so challenging. So, you know, this is what we have to do. It's a call to action to all of us. And I think that at the end of the day, you know, we have to all believe that we can be great. We can do this.
We can do this.
Martin Luther King says, you know, because everyone can be great because everyone can serve. And if we start thinking about helping our kids read, and that in turn helps our nation thrive, then you know, we can do this. And as he says, you know, you need a heart full of grace and a soul generated by love. And if we can love our kids enough to help them read, we'll be a greater nation.
Thank you.
So thank you. I think we're almost, I do want to thank our panel. I mean, it's been a wonderful conversation and discussion. So thank you, you know, Jeff and Dr. Moore and Chris and Reverend Hamlin. We so appreciate, you know, your coming to share your insights and your wisdom with us. And Jeff, your film is a conversation starter, and we thank you for
You're welcome.
allowing us to use it.
Yeah, thank you, and just encourage you. Anybody, I noticed that Hillary put in that you can just go to sentenced on the Children's Literacy Project.org. You can write me, Jeff, at children'sliteracyproject.org. We want you to use the film. We want the conversation that Dr. Moore is modeling for us in any community that could use the film with us. Become part of the, you know, you'll be entered into our, you know, our database for using the film, and then we have teams to help you. So please, if there's any inspiration around that idea, just find us, and we'll help you.
Absolutely. And I would just say on behalf of the Campaign for Grade Level Reading, remember that the campaign is a space where communities come together and talk about these issues in their smaller spaces too, not just on this national scale. So if you are not connected with your community, here's my pitch that says, please make sure you do that so that you can have those conversations with those who are doing the work in your state, in your region. So thank you all, and we hope you join us for some of the upcoming webinars. I did drop the link for them in the chat. We do these every Tuesday, so if this is the first time you've joined, we hope that you come back to learn about the resources that the campaign has to offer. Thank you all. I reiterate Joy's thanks to our panelists, and Joy, thank you so much for moderating this conversation today.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.